Welcome to another VC Wisdom Pod. Today with us is Luke Cooper. He is a founding partner at Latimer Ventures. Got me studying Mr. Latimer back in the days, one of the Edison engineers, one of the first really successful Black men in America when slavery was being abolished. So Luke, name his business. That when we're going to discuss that today, amongst other things. VC as well, AI, everything in between. This podcast has been brought to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to a podcast, even find great sponsors. Podcasts are really cool. You can get to speak to folks like Luke, get insights from them, build your community, subscribers, even get leads and clients. Podbuyer.com if you want help with that. Luke, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and tell us about Latimer Venture?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I'm Luke Cooper, managing director, founding partner of Latimer Ventures. It's named after Louis Latimer because Louis Latimer was from my hometown of Bridgeport, Connecticut. I grew up in Pequannock's projects in Bridgeport, Connecticut in the 1980s, and it was real difficult. I had a father who was in prison most of my life, uncles and cousins and everybody else who were in and out of prison due to drugs and other things happening in that environment. And I was, lucky to make it out with the help of a lot of supportive people. But Louis Latimer, a lot of his work, his inventions around carbon filament. Most people don't realize that, his carbon filament work is really the sort of the thing that sparked the early light bulb. And it's what, Edison ultimately, identified as critical to the function of the light bulb. And when he brought Louis Latimer onto his team, whom he found in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where I'm from, they went on to illuminate 75 million households. It's unreal, right? He never got the credit. He never got the money he deserved from that experience. And Latimer Ventures exists to help diverse founders not only get the money, or the credit that they deserve for their great inventions and how they're impacting corporate America in so many ways, but also the money and the wealth associated with it. As I mentioned, I'm from abject poverty, grew up, with a father in prison, but I'm also an M&A attorney, graduated law school at 23, 24 years old, and then went on to go build two companies after that I exited to Fortune 300 businesses. So both those companies exited. I returned money to my investors. I made money myself. And so that pathway is one that a lot of entrepreneurs have not navigated. And there's not a lot of detail around it. I went to Babson for my MBA and it's a great program, went to Syracuse for law school, great institutions, but they don't teach, they don't teach you that, right? How to navigate your way to an outcome. And so we exist to sort of be that exit factory for diverse founders, help them navigate their way to incredible outcomes.
As a founder, was it a more challenging journey as a Black founder? Did you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. Every day. And I'm in a Black city. I'm in Baltimore City where, 70% of the population is diverse or Black. A significant portion of the leadership here is Black as well. But, the historical, sort of legacy issues, in terms of lack of resources, sort of commitment to diversity in places like Baltimore has left a dearth of missing capital and opportunity for people that look like us, unfortunately. And I think it's America's, missed opportunity, right? Because the reality is you can't get more growth and innovation out of a rock. I mean, you've got to look under the rock and other places where you haven't looked before. So it was really difficult. I raised $6.5 million in venture, had great investors like, Precursor Ventures, Charles Hudson, US Cellular was one of my biggest investors as well. Asterisk Ventures out of Houston, Dallas as well. So we had great investors along the way. But, when I look at my collective competitor set, right, these are folks that were building a very similar company to Fixed. It was an on-demand API that managed all your mobile devices, all your mobile assets, and gave you asynchronous information about what was happening to those devices. We had half the Fortune 500, 60% gross margin, grew the business 300% year over year. I raised $6.5 million in total venture And, the founders, the four founders that were all white males in California building similar businesses, not the same, different go-to-market, different other, other elements of the businesses were different as well. But, I would definitely put them in my competitive set. They raised collectively 475 million to my 6.5 million. And so, I mean, you could argue a lot of reasons why that is. And I mean, I think there's probably some legitimate reasons why that just, maybe my gross margins weren't as good or, something like that. But, there's got to be more to that story. And I think part of it is just getting exposure, for Black founders who are doing things that I think are pretty incredible. And when I look at the numbers, it supports it. I mean, 1 in 3 Black founders is getting to enterprise tech founders is getting to Series A. And that's, in the general public, it's only 1 in 15.
And your thesis is that these Black founders can perform equally, if not better. That would be 1. And 2, major chip on the shoulder, which is always useful in the startup world. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes, everybody's got that chip. Every great founder has that chip, regardless of what background they have and where they come from. Usually something in their background, sort of provokes that, attitude and, ability to lead in really difficult situations. Where I think I'm helpful to, specifically to Black founders is helping them translate the things that they have learned along the way in their journey, growing up in the environments that we grow up in, how to translate those things into tech entrepreneurship success, right? Yeah, it's great that you are scrappy because like you grew up with limited resources and you don't necessarily believe in just expending capital just to expend it, right? You're very sort of thoughtful, right? That's a great thing, but as a founder, you also got to know when to push on the gas, right? And so what's the data set that you need to be examining that tells you when to stop being so scarce, scarcity mindset driven, or frugal, right, with those dollars and start to actually spend them, right? Most founders they just like rely on touch for those things to happen. And, I argue that, you need a lot more than touch. You need, sort of an experimentation framework. You need, a real, sort of, experimentation model that a data model that tells you when, you should begin to like make those additional investments. And there's a science to it. I mean, I think there's more science to entrepreneurship than not. And oftentimes, even though we have these unique attributes that make us, kind of successful, can lead to the success that we want to see in entrepreneurship, we never get there oftentimes because we don't know how to translate those things into real world applications. So I think that's part of the value add that I bring through Latimer Ventures.
Right. Yeah, I'm a huge believer on the chip on the shoulder thing. And I think people not coming from the common ethnic background have that probably 1.5x than me. And I consider I have a huge chip on my shoulders myself, never fit in the educational system and a bunch of other things could get into. But my question for you is, once you cut that check, what happens? Do you also have coaching sessions with the founders? How do you guide them to success?
Yeah, I think the very best venture capitalists are the ones that say, hey, I'm going to write that check, but I'm available to you for whatever you need, right? Let's have a standing quarterly check-in, and if you need me beyond that, just reach out to me whenever. Folks that write checks and walk away are not helpful. Folks that write checks and want to meet with you every week, I think those are difficult scenarios too. Founders and startups need a level of I would say incubation in the wild, right? They need, to have that, sort of real raw feedback that comes from, just being in front of customers, being in a knife fight every day, trying to figure out what product market fit, sales fit looks like. And then come back with careful pruning to your investors. And so when I write that check, I'm doing essentially 2 things. I'm delivering my playbooks that help them think through, sales enablement, building out the sales framework for the organization, how to think about not just product development, but like how do you name the product? How do you begin to like, sort of market, the product, pricing and socialize those kinds of things in a way that leads to continuous success. And so I'm delivering those playbooks. And then the second thing I'm doing is I'm helping to take away all of the thinking, around, what the future of the company in terms of M&A, right? 70% of companies, startup companies exit to, a Fortune 1000 global buyer, right? Somebody who needs a capability or something else. And so one of the things that I'm doing right at the outset of these founders is working through building that M&A optionality, right into the very investment. And oftentimes with that, we're bringing along one or two Fortune 500s. My last two companies that we invested in, we brought Dell, Cisco, IBM Ventures, and others into the mix. And we think that that's going to set the right precedent and conditions for future M&A. And if founders are not focused on that, they're missing the opportunity, right? There's so much bidirectional value that flows from understanding your market at that level.
So I had a Black CEO this morning, and we were discussing that we thought the Black community, what it needs is probably stars like Jay-Z, a better Kanye, the best version of Kanye, but for the business world. We've seen that in various angles in the last year. One of my favorite CEO is the CEO of Calendly. I think that's a unicorn right there. How can we create that? Because I mean, rap is like cultural, right? It really gets deep into us. Songs are reproducible. You can listen to them on a daily basis. In your down, in your ups, they directly inject serotonin, create a relationship with the rapper. Me was 50, for example, when and I was young in 2010. He's a good part of why I'm so ambitious today. Shout out to the song Ambition.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. How can we recreate that? Because it's more challenging, it seems.
Yeah, it is a challenging dynamic, right? And I get it. Like you want founders to have, all the great, sort of advice, feedback that is going to, sort of make them successful in the business. You want that like playing in their head like a song, right? There's no question about that, right? And what Jay-Z, Nas 50, it's amazing. We just had the 50th, anniversary of hip hop, and we were at Yankee Stadium celebrating, and it was incredible to see like this, how it spanned, multiple generations, multiple decades, and the impact that it's had on America. There's no question about that. And the art form itself is a form of entrepreneurship. There's no question about it. So I think it's about, taking those real stories and then like helping founders like see kind of themselves and the journey that Jay-Z took from the streets of Brooklyn, hustling in Marcy projects, and like trying things, right? He was experimenting, right? You think about someone like Too Short, right? Too Short out of LA. Like he didn't even have a car. Like forget about selling mixtapes out of your trunk. Like he was just like selling them by hand. He would pull up to a place and sell them by hand, right? But like, I think what the lessons that we can learn from those experiences that those hip hop artists have had is that hard work doesn't just mean I'm in front of my laptop talking to consumers. I'm trying things out on Mechanical Turk. I'm building, new, sort of playbooks for how we do pricing. That's a part of it, right? There's no question about that. But hard work is also just doing whatever it takes to get in front of customers, to get that validated feedback that helps you build the product even better. And for all of those hip hop people I just mentioned, all those rappers I just mentioned, like they were doing that, and they were doing it at such high frequency that they put that music back into, that feedback back into their music, which made it better and made them more successful. So lots of lessons we can learn there. I'm not sure of like the most formal way to do that, but I'm a huge hip hop fan, and I believe that there's lots of lessons that translate into traditional entrepreneurship.
Believe it's make entrepreneurship cool. How do you do that? Well, you get very, very rich, and you show people here's the result of the hustle. A cool rapper that passed away, one of my favorite was Nipsey Hussle. I think he was on his way there. Sadly, like life happened there. Beef happened. So lesson 101 there on not gathering too much haters, because yeah, it can reach that point sometimes, especially if it's in the streets. I'm seeing various pieces of innovation here in Mexico in the streets, from people in entrepreneurship. It just that sometimes it feels that it's so hard to get out of the hole, the hood, quote unquote. Is there innovations that you've seen in the hood, like other than selling CDs and so forth? And how do you think people can start more businesses in the hood and get out of the hole, quote unquote?
Yeah, it's a great question. To answer your question bluntly, yes, I see it all the time. I think the challenge, like I faced when I was 12 years old, there's no real connective tissue to the outside world. I was fortunate. My mom took us up on this tiny Cessna plane. She begged this pilot, at a local airport, like, hey, we live in the projects. Can you just like show us the world? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'll just take you up next Saturday. It took me and my sister and my mom up. And I was like, it was the first time I disconnected my projects where I grew up with like the rest of the world. And I was like, oh, okay, there's a whole world and I'm not trapped here, right? I can actually survive in that world. I think the other thing that happened when I was 12 was I got into this program called NIFTY, Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, and I built solar powered microwaves. And that just gave me, inspiration and courage that I could go do like amazing things with my mind. I just had to read them in a book and apply that knowledge, with my whole heart and my mind. For a lot of Black kids today, Latinx kids today across the US and in places like Mexico, there's no connective tissue out of their worlds. And so I think we've got to continue to build that. And the sort of feedback that I give those young entrepreneurs, young people that are trying to like find, claw, build, scratch their way out of like their current circumstances is talk to everybody. Talk to everybody. Have conversations with, people that you don't know. You see a random successful looking white person, talk to them. Like, how did you get successful? What do you do? Do you know anything about entrepreneurship? How would you go, solving this problem? Well, if you were solving this problem and you were building a product, where would you go to get money? Where would you go to talk to somebody to get, help? And so what you're essentially doing when you have these conversations is you're expanding your network of resources beyond yourself, right? And so I tell founders that all the time. And it's there. The talent is there. I think people mistake, sort of the lack of, of success stories with the lack of talent, and that's not true, right? I was in West Baltimore a few months ago, doing a talk to a group of kids, top 100 camp, basketball camp, and I'm driving home. And I'm in a black Tesla driving home, doing 35, 40 miles an hour on the street. And there's a kid, 16-year-old kid, standing on a platform about this big, about the size of two computers sitting next to each other. And he's just like standing on it. And he's going at the same rate of speed as me, right? And we're in West Baltimore. It's like 9:30 at night, right? People don't roll their windows down in West Baltimore at 9:30 at night. I rolled my window and I was like, bro, what's going on? What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I was just bored, and I built this. And he's got a TV remote control, plugs coming out of it. And he built this scooter essentially with no handlebar or whatever. And he's just cruising down the street. So if that can exist in a place like Baltimore, I mean, what else are we missing? What else is here that, we're just missing an opportunity to invest in and do more with?
Whoa, man, that's straight out of sci-fi right there. You're in your Tesla and the guy's rolling next to you at like 30 miles an hour. The fuck?
Right, yeah.
How can these kids avoid traps? What are the traps and what are the stairs?
Yeah, your own stomach is a trap, right? Like your own stomach is a trap and your mind is a trap sometimes, right? Because your stomach will fool your mind into making decisions that are rational decisions to make, right? If you think that you are in, absolute fear of dying from hunger, right? Because these kids are so hungry, right? And they're hungry for basic resources. I need a better place to live. I need food in my refrigerator. I'm tired of seeing just baking soda in the refrigerator. I'm tired of eating chips for dinner, right? Like you're hungry. I get it. right? And that hunger affects your brain, which makes you think that, oh, it makes sense for me to, hit a lick, and that's what we say, right? Or steal something, right? Or, commit a crime or something else. Those are rational decisions that these kids are making, right? Because they're operating in a place of like complete lack, right? But like those are tricks. Those are tricks and traps that like keep you in the same environment, right? I tell kids that you need, hard work, discipline, sacrifice, self-confidence, right? And the sacrifice, self-confidence are almost twin, sort of virtues, right? On the sacrifice side, you're going to lose some things and you're not going to be able to eat every night, right? You're going to miss opportunities, to sort of get the basic resources that you need. Sometimes they're not going to be there, right? But like by having the right intentions, right? And then like really operating in that, sort of right intentions, mindset, right? Like you can get to a level of self-confidence because of you consistently making the right decisions. The universe is not kind to us, right? At all. And I think we often mistake, this idea that, if we just show up and ask for things, we're going to get what we want. It doesn't work that way. You've got to actually believe that you are worth, so much more, and that you're valuable, and that your ideas can be valuable. You've got to believe great things about yourself. And if you believe great things about yourself, the energy of that belief will organize all of the resources and assets around you to accomplish your goals and mission. I know it sounds fuzzy and all that, but it works. Yeah. And it's the absolute right thing for these kids to be doing. It's the thing I preach all the time. And I'm grateful to have a position that I get to encourage kids that way.
There you go. Yeah, platform. I think we need to give, or I'm pretty sure you're already on it, but you need to be out there. You need to promote the shit out of these Facebook ads and Insta ads and be in their feeds and just spread that gospel. Because you've been there, you've done that, and that's related to my last question. But so much wisdom in that podcast. The main one is that, let's give them a shot. Let's give them a fucking shot. And if they fail, well, try 100 times, fail 97 times, succeed 3 times, tries, and I think that's the formula. So if we can make them understand that, then give them a shot. Someone gave you a shot, put you up in that Cessna, and had you realize that's like a magical moment right there. It's like an aha moment that define the rest of your life. So that's pretty cool. My last question, like you've made it, you started from the bottom quite literally, and now you're here. How does that feel, and how do you use that to influence your community and make sure that folks have a shot at the net?
Yeah, there's a great poem by Rudyard Kipling called "If," and he talks about a bunch of things in that poem. Feeling every, a couple of things. Right. Well, first thing, one of the first things about the poem that I love, he talks about how you need to be able to walk with kings, but keep your common touch. Right. And I believe it wholeheartedly. That's how I operate. It never goes, gets too far away from me, the circumstances in which I grew up. And the fact that there are so many people that still live in those same kinds of circumstances. Quite frankly, some of my family, right? I got a cousin who just got home who did 30 years in prison, right? And like, so these are people I know. They don't let me forget where I come from and what I come from. And so, yeah, I've made it, for all, sort of, intents and purposes, I've made it. I'm successful, but like, there's so much more success to be had. And you can't really feel, the true effect of success if you've got, friends and family and other people who are just not doing well. And you can't, you're not successful enough to just help them with all their needs, right? And so, the journey, the battle, the work just continues every single day. One of the other aspects of that Rudyard Kipling poem, he says, you should fill every unforgiving minute with 60 seconds of distance run, right? And then you will be a man, my son, right? And like, I just try to live that way every single day and fill every single minute with as much distance run as possible. And I think if we do that and have the right intention, self-love, self-confidence, sacrifice, hard work, all those other things that are important, we can do incredible things together as a society.
Love it. Wow. I'll re-listen to that one. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at no mud, no magic. Or they can find me on LinkedIn. If they want more direct access, Instagram is the way to go. Again, it's at no mud, no magic.
And I'm Charles Cormier, host of VC Wisdom Podcast. If you want to start, scale, or